Okay, so imagine for a moment that you were invited into a room, and in this room, you thought it was just another team meeting. You had no idea that this was actually going to be your last day. Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today in my episode of my crazy corporate career chronicles. Okay, so if you're new here, welcome or welcome back. I am going to be sharing with you how this particular day, which was the first day I had ever in my long tenure of my career, for the very first time I had been laid off, actually laid off, and how that turned out to be the most liberating day and actually a blessing in disguise. So if you're new to me, once again, welcome or welcome back. My name is Catrina Marie. I am also known as the Boss Chick Biz Coach and your fearless leader. I'm a holistic business coach and an RN health and wellness educator. And I teach women, successful corporate career women just like you, how to transition out, and high achieving women entrepreneurs how to build an aligned and profitable online brand and business without sacrificing your soul and sanity or compromising your health and happiness. And that's exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you today in this episode. So stay tuned and stay charged up, okay? So you're going to be in for a great story here, but I always like to give you the lesson in the end. So definitely stay tuned because there's always a lesson, a very valuable lesson to be learned. And I don't want you to miss the biggest message and the takeaway message from today's episode, okay? So I'm going to take you back to my early startup phase of my business. Okay, so this had to be, I started this online coaching and consulting business back in 2016, January 2016. And so it was, I want to say maybe end of 2017, 2018, when I was still in the workforce. Okay, so I hadn't transitioned all the way out myself yet. I was still working as a healthcare administrator, as a registered nurse, doing leadership stuff. Okay, so at this particular time, it was early on again in my business phase, but I was kind of like weaning myself out at this point and making the transition, funding my dream business and making the transition completely out of corporate so I can focus on my business completely, full time. So at this particular time, I was working for a large corporation, and I'm going to back up a bit because I want to tell you how I even got here. So this corporation, I'm not going to say the name of the organization because you'll know it right off the bat. You know, I've worked for a lot of Fortune 500, 100, 50, Fortune 50 companies, very prestigious, well-renowned organizations in the healthcare arena. And this particular company is nationwide, so they have locations all over the place. And at this time, I didn't know that they were desperately looking for someone who can actually be an interim director and then transition into like overseeing their like main hub in Atlanta. And so at this time, they had gone through a lot of curriculum vitae CVs or resumes, right, with a bunch of people who were apparently applying for this position that they had posted for a very long time. And then here I come out of the blue seemingly, and which was true because, I just happened to be in the market for a full-time position. And I landed the position. And how I got it was, first of all, they saw my resume. It was passed on from, I guess, their HR people. And the hiring manager wanted to call me in right away. I met with their team of leaders across the board, other regional directors and higher ups. And then, so I did a panel interview. We hit it off great. It was a really, very relaxed interview. They were like, you got this in the bag. We're going to invite you back for a second interview to meet with the actual hiring manager who is in the current position right now of the position we want you to take on, because she's actually transitioning out and bringing someone new into this position. And so it was a whole transitional thing. And so, but ultimately what they wanted me to do and what they were truly hiring me for was to oversee this particular department in their Atlanta hub. So the second time I came back to meet with the actual hiring manager, the regional director, we hit it off. It was like we had been friends and known each other for years. And it was just so great. And we were just like, okay, let's get the show on the road. When can I start? Where do I sign up? And before they already had hired me at this point, but then I came back a third time to then meet the staff that I would actually be overseeing, to kind of break the ice, to give them an opportunity to ask me some questions about my leadership style and my management style and what I've done before. And, and I got to know them. And then they brought me on. Okay. So now I'm actually in the first 3 months, which you know and I know as the introductory or probationary period, right? So you've got 90 days or 3 months where you are kind of filling out the role. You're wanting to make sure that this is the right fit for you, that it's it's a really good, the culture of the organization is what you know, now that you're in-house, that you know it's everything you hope for. You want to make sure that you know, you're kind of like test driving, right? And they're test driving you. So that's what this is. It's like an opportunity for both parties to decide if after the 90 days we're going to move forward or we're going to call it a wash and walk away. So I passed the 90 days with flying colors, and in the duration of time that I was going through that 3-month period of time, I actually was being trained up. So it was a very extensive training, the full 3 months it took. Okay. So they flew me out to different areas. Of course, they got me accommodations, really nice luxury accommodations, a nice, you know, car to rent. So once I was there, I had a way to get around. I had a company card to purchase everything on. Anything that came out of pocket at all until, you know, while they were waiting to get this card to me, because there was a little bit of a gap in them getting the card to me in time. So I was able to get reimbursed for anything that had to come out of pocket. But for the most part, you know, there was really nothing much that came out of pocket. They paid for everything. So it was quite extensive, and it was quite expensive to go through all of the training at their headquartered office. And I'm not going to say where, because that might allude to who the company is. Okay. And I'm not going to tell, but so I went through all of that, you know, was getting to know about their systems and how they operate and all the operational piece and the clinical piece and what their challenges were and, you know, all of that jazz. Okay. And they were obviously getting to know more about me and my background and how I can impart my wisdom on, you know, based on what my background had been and what my experience was, and how I could really, you know, collaborate with them on some of the projects they had coming up, some of the initiatives, yada, yada, yada. So once I got past all of that phase, then they sent me back to the main hub. And by now, you know, the other guy that they brought on was also being trained as the regional director. And the regional director who hired me on was actually going into another role to do something still for this department, but just something altogether different. I think it was international work. So now everybody's kind of in their positions, and now I'm in the main hub, and we're rocking and rolling. Okay. Now they had shared with me some of the challenges about, you know, which most of what they had shared with me had much to do with, you know, some subordination, you know, some staffing issues. They knew I was HR trained and certified. They knew I had a legal background, and they knew I'd been a nurse and in leadership for a long time. So they were really hoping to just, you know, utilize all of that to help them whip things in shape. Okay. But they really hired me into a position where there were a lot of inherited problems. Okay. Like they didn't share a lot with me. They shared a lot, but they didn't share a lot. They like left some things out. Okay. So I didn't really know what I was up against. So what had happened was, you know, I dealt with, you know, I brought the employees in, I had a team meeting, and then I met with them one-on-one because I wanted to have some, you know, some time for them to share with me some things that they might have needed to share in confidentiality, some personal, private things. And you can't do that in an open forum with staff, right? But then I also wanted everybody to feel a part of this team. And of course, so we had a staff meeting early on. Well, that was actually the easy part. The other issues and where the issue stemmed from was much bigger than what I was willing to deal with. Much bigger than what I had bargained for. Went deeper than what anybody ever had shared with me. And so it had come to a point where they had asked me to participate in basically taking up the slack for what the staff couldn't deliver on. And they really had a lot of unrealistic expectations. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, and this is just one or two of a million things that they asked me to do that I was not here for it. But they wanted me to do some work that really the staff should be doing, or really they should have outsourced to a company or to their headquarters where their department was fully staffed and they had the capacity to be able to take on the brunt of the work that obviously was spilling out of this office. They had some leadership issues as well, and they had some issues against like departmental wide, but also organizational wide. So they had some challenges that, they were expecting me to come in and be their savior, right? And bandage up like a wound that was hemorrhaging instead of just dealing with the hemorrhaged problem, right? Fixing that, going deeper and dealing with that instead of bringing me in as a bandage, you know what I mean? Or as the cleanup woman, because I felt like that was very irresponsible for them to ask me to neglect my family and my own needs and things of that nature, where I would be coming in off hours, working very early mornings, doing overnight stuff, going out of my jurisdiction for the, as far as the regional contractual piece of it, just things that were not right and proper. Okay. They were just not, I was not willing to do any part of that. So I refused. And I'm so sure, I know they were shocked because they were like, what do you mean no? Because no is a complete sentence as far as I'm concerned. So I told them no, absolutely not. And, and I elaborated out of respect for who they were, okay, and all that they had done for me to get me trained up. But I was like, no, you guys should have told me this from the beginning. But in no way am I willing to sacrifice my peace of mind or my sanity. I am in no way willing to neglect my own needs or that of my family. I am in no way willing to be a slave to a job that, and feel like I am having to do this work because you guys are not fixing the real problem. You're just trying to use me and my skills to be a part of this mess instead of cleaning up the mess yourself. Like, you're putting this on me, but that's irresponsible of you, right? So I told them some reasonable things that they could do to actually fix the problem. And it didn't require me, or them for that matter, to do these overnight working sessions, to call me while I'm at home, and for me to be working while I'm at home trying to enjoy time with my family. Where's the life-work balance there? And that's a priority for me. And I was very clear in that when I talked through the interview, when I went through the interview process and I told them what was important to me. That was the number one thing: my family, my health, and my finances, right? Or I think I said my faith, my family, and my wealth, or my health rather. And I was just like I'm not willing to. That's non-negotiable, right? I've got non-negotiables, and so they decided to hire me anyway with that understanding. But I think they thought once I got in there, it would be different because now I'm here. But I'm here, I'm in it, but I'm not trapped. And I don't feel any type of way that you guys just paid all this money to travel me around and to train me up just to now let me know after the fact something you should have told me up front. But in no way am I willing to do what you guys are asking me to do. That's ridiculous. And why are you doing it? Why are you willing? You know what I mean? So yes, I gave them some. I don't ever come without a solution. You present me with a problem, I'm not going to live in the problem. I'm going to say, okay, well, this is the problem at hand, or these are the problems at hand, and here is the actual solution I have. So let's get in solution mode and figure this thing out together. Here's what we could do. And I laid it out. Okay. We spent hours and days upon days and weeks, really getting this whole thing mapped out. Seemed like everybody was on the same page and it was a great idea. Well, so what happened was they took my idea of outsourcing, and instead of just outsourcing the problematic piece, right, to kind of unburden and unbury everybody from this heavy workload and just handing it off to the people who could actually maintain it and allow me to just do the job that I was really there to do, which was manage this department. Okay. Instead of doing that, they decided to call a mandatory meeting. And like I said, I thought, okay, we're going to be having a staff meeting, not a problem. Let me go ahead and get prepared. The director, the interim director, the regional director who had hired me on, she came in, she hugged me, she hugged everybody, she talked to everybody, she chit-chatted it up. It didn't seem like it was an unusual, out of the ordinary day at all. But then here's what was odd. So just to give you an idea of what the setup of this office was, there was like a middle open area, okay, just open space, okay. Nothing was really there, but you could set up, well, I think there were a couple tables and some like equipment like computers or whatnot that could be moved around, right? A couple of cubicles. But for the most part, everybody had an office. So in the middle, there was just an open area, and then surrounding the open area were a bunch of offices that went all the way around, like a bunch of just offices with doors, right? You can close the door. And then there was a conference room, okay? And then there was the front lobby, like the waiting reception area when guests came through and vendors. So we typically have a meeting of any kind in the conference room where most meetings are held, right? And the only time it would have made sense for us to have a meeting in an open area like that was if the conference room was already reserved, and it wasn't. And even if it was, then they should have scheduled it for another day and time. So that struck me as odd. So we get there and they started handing out some papers, some folders and different things. I saw HR came in and I'm like, oh, it kind of crossed my mind of what this might be. But I thought maybe they're going to deal with, which still didn't make sense, that they were going to, deal, just, I don't know. I either thought they were going to deal with the certain employees and they were going to say maybe a couple of employees had to be moved, or there were going to be some changes that affected our department. Well, yeah, that was true, because they ended up basically saying that this is your last day. We're terminating everybody effective immediately. And there were a lot of emotions that ran high in that room. Okay. And it was so unprofessional, so distasteful, so tacky to me, in my opinion, to have this meeting in front of everybody who around us could hear. Like, who does that? Why not bring us in this room and share this with us privately? Especially when people are not going to be prepared for this. People have families. Some of the employees had young children. I think one of my employees had just had a new baby. Like, this is not how this should have been rolled out. Okay. And so it just didn't sit with me the right way, but I actually laughed, because I just knew as they started to unfold, as they started to share, you could just kind of hear in the conversation that it was leading up to a termination, a layoff. And all I could do was shake my head. Now, you would have thought because I was actually ill prepared, and this is the first time it ever happened to me. Like, I had colleagues who had gone through this, and I was like, wow, I hope that never happens to me. Well, I wasn't prepared for the layoff necessarily, but I was, right? And I'll tell you why. Let me explain. So at this time, going back to the beginning of how I opened the conversation about me being in business, I was in the early startup phase. And me and my wife at the time, we were business partners. We started this business together. We had just celebrated our 23rd year anniversary. We had just written our first best-selling book. We were doing a lot of collaborations. We did JV partnerships with bigger brands. And at this particular time, we had been invited by a well-known brand who offered us, I think it was like the last. She had already brought on some other speakers, but we were like the last to come on. And it was the only seat left for this speaking tour. That was a nationwide speaking tour. And we were able to do like a dual thing, right? Where we actually went on tour to speak, but we also went on a book tour at the same time. So it was just so much excitement, right? At this time, in this time frame. And it made me just feel like, this is God's way of telling me everything's going to be all right, because I set you up pretty, right? You already have it made in the shade, so to speak. Here's the other thing, though, I want to say, and here's the lesson learned, and I want you to take away this message right here. Always stay ready so you don't have to get ready, okay? Because you never know when you're going to get your walk-in papers from these corporations. And for me, I was only 4 months in, but thank God, and by the grace of God and His mercy and grace and generosity, thank you, I was able to be set up for successful business. So it didn't matter so much to me that I was going to be let go, effective immediately. They actually did me a favor. because I believe I would have quit anyways when I was ready on my terms, right? But God must have known I was ready. So I parted ways with Grace. They started to collect the keys and all the access to the building and the gate code and, computer codes and badges and all of that jazz. They gave us our walk-in papers, and I happily turned over everything, wished them the best of luck, and walked on out and moved on with my life and my business. And so I say all that to say that it's always risky to put your eggs in one basket, okay? Never, 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 and learn this from me so you don't have to learn the hard lesson, okay? Or maybe you have already. Never put your eggs in one basket. You always want to be multiplying and diversifying your income streams. Thankfully for me, again, I had a written book, a best-selling book that we had written. We were doing great in selling that book. We had a speaking tour, right? We were getting money from that. We had the JV partnerships. We were ambassadors for another company. We were getting money from that. We were getting money from any clients that we were working with at the time. We were doing like a number of things, right? We were doing workshops. We were doing all kinds of, again, joint venture partnerships and just whatever we were doing on our own to make money in the business. And so I say all that to say that I was very well prepared, even though I wasn't expecting this pivotal moment, but it was a moment in time that I'd have to say, for the first time of this happening in my entire career, it was absolutely freeing. I didn't feel enslaved and entrapped in this vicious cycle of everything that comes with corporate America. And I was really over this job. I was just like, you know what, you guys are going to lose me here real quick because I'm not up for this. And this is not what I'm about to be a part of. And so in saying no to them, they in turn, let me go. But it was the most liberating feeling to be laid off. And so just again, the biggest message and takeaway from this Corporate Chronicles in this episode is for you to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Let me know if you've ever been laid off in your job and what that outcome was like. Were you prepared, ill prepared? How did that turn out? I'd love to know. Share your story in the comments below. All right. Well, that's my time. So I'm going to tune out while you tune in. Be sure to watch the next video that YouTube recommends. As always, and until next time, I am wholeheartedly in this journey with you. Bye for now.